So, I think it's important to sort of forecast really far in advance, give yourself some options to do things. I think one of the easiest way to give yourself options to do things is to start building an audience, start having a conversation. So, this whole reciprocity project, um, it started out as building this platform to help with my work. So that's like the writing component of it. If you go to reciprocity.com, that's what you'll see. The E is written with a three. And what you'll see is it's very geared towards providing solutions. But what I have evolved into, or what I've thought about, it is that you really need some sort of audience for the long run. And whether that is like, so you through that do that sort of normally through, at least in my fields, writing a book or writing several books, or having a conversation, or sorry, writing academic articles. The whole idea, the whole game of what we're trying to do is just build an audience. And without that audience, um, I realized that not much actually happens. um, it's just kind of like dead, right? And so the goal, is to sort of think about, for the long term, you might not necessarily know what you want to do, right? And that's the thing I want to point out, is that I don't know what I want to do when I'm 65. But without an audience, without people following along, curious about your ideas and what you're thinking about, nobody pays attention to what you're going to do, and it locks out a tremendous amount of opportunities. I want you to sort of think about, like, what do you need to start a business so that it would be really easy to start a business when you're 65 years old? Well, you need customers, right? So how do you get those customers? Through having an audience. Now you can pay for that audience, with ads, right? Or you can do it, with doing sort of entertainment or whatever, like all these kind of things. And in the modern economy, using digital, online social platforms, you can, build. Uh, Now, imagine you want to write a book, right? Like, or several books. Nobody is going to pay attention to that book, or nobody is going to read that book unless you actually have an audience that people are going to pay attention to, right? That they are not going to be curious about this thing. Now, another thing you might be thinking about is, um, uh, um, creating. It doesn't matter what any number of different things. If you don't have that audience, if you're not sort of preparing and building that audience, then it's very difficult to 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 do anything, right? Like, to actually create something in the future. Now, so many people might not choose to do anything like that, but here's the thing: it gives you options, right? It gives you a tremendous number of options when you actually have an audience. The other thing that is tricky, though, is, you know, if you have too large of an audience, it sometimes might be, I can imagine it might be kind of annoying to walk around. You no longer are sort of invisible, and then, you're recognized by other people, and it can be annoying. But I think for the most part, most people don't get to that level of recognition. And I think having a moderately small audience for any of us is really, really important. And figuring out, okay, what are we going to do here in the long term? What are these options that I can pursue? Right? It doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or whatever. If you don't have that audience, it is very hard to to do much. And the reason is nobody is sort of paying attention, and it's very hard to get people's attention. You would think it would be easy, but in this, you have to think about the other people is that they have all sorts of things that they can pay attention to and look at, and your one thing, whatever it is, maybe you write a book by the time you're 65 years old, but your one thing, it does not matter in their eyes. It is completely irrelevant. Um, there's so much that's like that that it's just completely irrelevant, uh, because most people are constrained. So if you can give as much as you possibly can, that's really what building an audience is about, is thinking about how can I give? How can I figure out different ways to give? And then by chance, at some point in the future, somebody might sort of return the favor at one point if they choose to. I think that's all you can sort of hope for. But that's the thing, you need such a large audience to do that. That we need to you need to work on it a long time. Um, so what I'm getting at is without an audience, without sort of people following along, it is very hard to do a lot of projects, a lot of things that you might be interested in. With an audience, it's a lot more easier to do that. Um, I was listening to this. Oh, that's what I was listening to was the Hank brothers, right? They created this vlog, and it was interesting listening to them. I don't know if you heard this one, but how I built this podcast about them building it. But I think one of the brothers um, wrote a book early on, and they sold a little bit, right? Like a couple hundred copies of this book. But then once they built the audience, which was several years into it, it wasn't that as nearly as big as what they were. They sold the book, or when they sold the book, they were able to sell 50,000 copies, which is pretty substantial. That's a decent amount that you're actually selling. Um, so I just want to point out, without an audience, it is very hard to do anything. It doesn't matter what area it is. You need sort of, um, as Kevin Kelley points out, 1,000 true fans. Like, people that are just fans of who you are, um, that will follow along and, maybe support you if they need to. So getting those 1,000 true fans, that's the hard part, right? That is where you have to do a lot of building friendships, like actually talking to people, saying hi. Um, whether that's in the normal arena that you might think about or the digital arena. It's just like building friendships at the end of the day, and I think that's a key thing to remember: is you have to build friendships, um, to actually get an audience, but building friendships takes a long time. All right, that's all I wanted to talk about. Um, Keep doing cool things and get after it. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.